All right. And we will allow the crowd to come through. And I am so not excited about the dangling cable. Qué cosa más fea, Dios mío. Nope, that doesn't work. Esto es en vivo, mi gente. I'm sorry for everybody. Yo no tengo presupuesto, yo no tengo crew. Esto es yo solito, así que no me juzguen por la calidad que todavía le falta. Okay, están mis invitados. Oh my God. Okay, so aquí. And where's Ivan? Okay, so. And so. Okay. Iván, ¿dónde diache tú estás? I'm gonna cut somebody. Talk about a stereotype. And it's me talking about cutting the Colombian. Now that's a fun one. Excuse me. Oh my God. Okay, hace calor. I'm not with this heat. No estamos en Puerto Rico, ni en República Dominicana, ni en ninguna parte del Caribe. So. Ivan, where are you? I'ma cut you. Hmm. Now I know why podcasts have background music as they buffer and wait for all this. See, y'all seeing all this in real time. That's yeah, not proud of that. Um, ugh. I'm not gonna lie. Like I just woke up 2 hours ago. I no. This is. I've been playing Pokemon Sword and Shield, the Crown Tundra expansion, and I am very excited about that. It's not helping. And really, this is just stalling for Iran. Lo voy a matar. Lo voy a matar. Having technical difficulties. He's yeah, he's having issues with mobile. Um, so in the meantime, while Iran shows up, um, this is interesting. Okay. Um, this isn't working. This the having this on isn't working. Okay. Can't access the studio for some reason. Can't access the studio. This is not supposed to happen. This is not supposed to happen. It's like a failure. Chango. Um, you know what? I I
Hello. Okay, I'm here.
So
Sorry about the delay.
I guess it's all right. All right, can you guys hear me?
yeah,
All right. Yes.
All right.
Jesus.
So just so you're cognizant of how this is going to work, and for everybody watching, unfortunately, it's a limitation that even the news media is having. They there are so many people online nowadays, so there will be a 10-second delay in between us talking. So just so everybody knows.
Interesting.
All right. So breathe in, breathe out. All right. So, konnichiwa minasan. Hola, ¿cómo están? This is Konnichiwa Habibi with YG Garcia. I'm your host, YG Garcia, and we are with our guests, Ricardo Jose and Ivan Caban. And my ring light is off. Esto es en vivo, mi gente. I'm sorry for everybody. Ghetto. Okay, we're back. All right, so we are going to be talking about the Caribbean diaspora, and we're going to be discussing the differences on how Latino culture has evolved as an offshoot of its original form, also known as the diaspora, as well as how it evolved in its origin in the Caribbean. We all know that cultures change over time. That's what the word evolve comes in.
Evolution.
And so we're going to explore the implications of that. So I'm here so with my guests, Ivan and Ricardo, and we are going to be hopefully showing through our life experiences what their unique experience and cultural combinations imply on this subject matter. Now, don't forget, you can follow us on all your social media platforms, Twitter at YG Garcia Author, on Instagram at YG_author, and our YouTube channel is still under construction, so stay tuned to this platform. We will update you once we have a URL. We will be posting links of the videos once they upload, and they'll be edited, of course, because the first 20 minutes, I'm sorry for everybody, was a train wreck. But your boy has a learning curve. So this is all our first time using these platforms. So now back to the show and our guests. They have a lot to talk about, so we don't want to keep you waiting. We hope that at least one stereotype is destroyed by the end of this program. Now, this is going to be much more of a late night talk show format, so it'll feel different. So, first of all, we want to hear from from Ricky. So it's a pleasure to have you on the program today. Tell us a little bit about your background. So your country origin and where you live, culture shock, your reaction.
All right. Thank you, man. So my name is Ricardo Jose. I was born in the Dominican Republic. All my family is Dominican. I lived there until the age of 9. So then,
Okay.
which we moved to New York. My grandfather was already here, but he was in the Manhattan area, but moved here due to jobs and stuff. I believe the company was here, so he was in the Rochester area after having lived in New York City. Came here at the age of 9. Um, I was expecting more of the Times Square vibe, the tall buildings, the lights and stuff. That was at the door pretty quick when I arrived at the airport. I was expecting more of a Caucasian population because the movie's out. That's what I saw. But I remember we drove from the airport. We started to get Chinese food over on Clinton. And I thought my mom was playing tricks on me because I hear a lot of Spanish being spoken. And as you know, there's a lot of Hispanic on Clinton Avenue. So right out the gate, I was shocked by the amount of Spanish speakers in the area. So other than that, it's been a good experience so far um, here in Rochester, New York.
Right.
Interesting. Okay, so are we allowed to ask questions?
So it's really interesting when the media portrays something, and what we've been seeing consistently is that
Okay.
the portrayal and the experience are so different.
Yeah.
Exactly.
One of the things that I find so interesting was that that shattering of the expectations of New York City, like the lights and the city and the advertisement, all that is real. Yes, if you look up, if you look down, you see a lot of homelessness, a lot of feces, a lot of it smells really bad. It smells really really bad in most parts of it. Unfortunately, that is also a thing in Los Angeles when I went there. It's not all parts of LA, it's not all parts of New York City, but really they do window dress a lot in the media portrayals of New York. We are 8 hours away from New York City. We have nothing to do with New York City here in Rochester. And even in Rochester, the Caucasian population is really small. This is a primarily Black and Latino city.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's a little bit of the skinny on New York. So, Ivan, we've had you silent enough right now until now. So, we want to hear your background, your country of origin,
Okay.
and I heard you're of a very unique mix and context. So, tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. I'll elaborate the best I can for bear with me. Okay, so my story is my name is Ivan Caran. I was originally born in Miami, Florida, specifically Hialeah, outskirts of Miami. Um, my father, originally from the island Borinquen, Puerto Rico, he was born and originally in Santurce.
Ooh, Miami.
Yeah.
Ooh,
To give, to give
Hialeah.
to break down the origins of my family. My mother is Colombiana, originally from Colombia, Cartagena. She would be considered a costeña over there, which is still technically Caribbean coast Colombia. So, what can I say? My parents, however, I wasn't strictly raised in one place in the beginning. My mom came here as an immigrant, grew up in Houston. We kept on going
Interesting.
back. We kept on going back and forth. Up in the last time I lived in Florida that I can recall was 5th grade, and after that we came back again, and the rest is history. Houston, raised and bred. What I can say is that my dad's family came to the States in the early '80s. They had Theo and a Tia, my grandfather's.
It's really
Go ahead.
interesting how the back and forth is so endemic to Puerto Ricans.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Even as a kid, I kind of was like, I still remember some experiences from the old place I lived, even though I was raised in the city here. What I can say is that I guess if you want to hear about my experience.
So yeah, the culture shock. Tell us a little bit about that. Okay, the delay.
Culture.
Sorry.
I'll try to explain it in the best I can because I'm coming from a different experience since I was born in the States. I will say this: being raised around people in Houston, it is a different. At least at the time when I was growing up, I'm turning 32 this month or this following month, November, and comparing the city to now versus back then. Yeah, I was born. I mean, I consider myself ethnically Latino. Latino American, born in the U.S. However, it's different because I'm coming from a diverse range of family. I grew up knowing my tias over here, and then I also have my uncle that lives in the city on my dad's side, and those are two different cultural exchanges. People got along. People were accustomed to each other, but it's just a different perspective and mentality addressing certain situations. Like for example, on my Colombian side, my parents, my mom, the tias, her sisters. She's the oldest one. They were always talking about progression and moving on up, so moving up the social ladder. I guess in terms of progressing in life. Whereas on my Boricua side, my father's side, they're more family oriented. They're more, I no think keep the family together. I no se va porque tú quieres ir like that. I guess it's that type of experience. Like my grandparents on that side were born in the 30s, so 36 and 37. So they're coming from that generational, upbringing, if that makes sense.
So it's more about one thing I've noticed is for Puerto Ricans, we like to live in the moment versus people who are from other Latino countries are much more work ethic intensive. Is that what you think? What you've perceived?
That's an interesting take on it. It's not far from being realistic. It's not far. You could kind of see. I could kind of see, even as you say that, I can kind of see it because they're a little bit more like the Boricuas. They're a little bit more in their own world when it comes to how they want to live. Like they want to live their life, take care of their family, live day by day. And I guess in some cases there's this not tension, but there's this sense of unease where it's like, estos tipos está hablando mucho de hacer dinero, or like that type of stuff. They're all weary people who are like como quien dice bubbly and all that stuff. It's like everybody likes their routine. I suppose it's kind of hard to put it in words, but I try to put it in the best of my knowledge, and yet there is a difference in that workflow, if that makes sense. So.
Ricky, what's been your experience with this or your observation? Because like Puerto Ricans were the ones who had so many businesses open in Washington Heights and New York City. Um, but now when I went there, it's almost all Dominican businesses. Do you think that it's this same dynamic that the Colombians in Ivan's family had? What's the mindset of Dominicans when they come here?
Get the money.
And actually versus Dominicans in the island.
Yeah, all throughout the board is pretty much you come here for a better life. As far as economics go, back home, pretty much everybody. If you weren't in college or university, you were a business owner. So we live in back in DR. We live in the street. We have like 3 to 4 businesses on that same street where my grandma lives. So personally, for me, we're pretty much entrepreneurship, own your own business. But yeah, here in New York, when you go to Washington Heights, you see a lot of Dominican businesses. Personally, my family's in the real estate business, with the maintaining, renting, sometimes flipping houses. So pretty much when you leave the mainland, you come here to basically get a better life for yourself, but also take care of those back home. So again, the goal is to get the money build here, but also take care of those who are left behind. And that was mostly in the 90s, with the movies Nueva York, uh, by Luisito Balbuena. It depicts the of leaving the mainland.
What's interesting is that this sounds a lot like the experience of Puerto Ricans, like my family that came here. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Some of the movies.
Oh yeah, it just depicts what I told you of leaving the mainland, coming here, working um, as hard as you can, get as much money, try to invest in another business here, and then send money back home to help, and also build businesses there or homes and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And we'll also like to add that the dollar has always been more than the Dominican peso.
I wonder if so. I've always been trying to discover what the shift is, because that was the. Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Okay, so again, the delay is very evident. So the last thing I heard was the Dominican peso thing. So just to keep it going, this is interesting. I really hope this Zoom era just ends. So it's really interesting to see how the evolution happened. So we had this moving to America mentality in Puerto Rican culture. That's how it happened in my family. Work here and build in the island. Some people were like, oh, I want to go back and retire there. That was the original intent of my family. But and that's a lot of the similar mentalities in Puerto Rican migrants. But then I observe when the Puerto Rican culture fuses with the ghetto culture that it's often surrounded with, ghetto and American culture, it's like, okay, well, aquí nos quedamos, we're here, and a lot of the mindsets are absorbed, and so it's like there's no fire up our butts, to so to speak. There's no really incentive to really to do these same things that you guys spoke of. I'm not going to get too much into that because I'm going to get a lot of people mad, and I'm going to get myself mad. But I have observed that trend, that it's, and you know what? It's not just a Puerto Rican thing. I've noticed attitudes in Mexican Americans and other Latinos, I think even Dominican Americans, that have these mindsets. Ivan, what have you observed these things, that absence of ambition, compared to the recent arrived, or the newly arrived Latinos?
Okay. I'm gonna try. I'll try to explain it from my particular perspective. Like you were saying, I may upset some family members on whichever side. Whoever listens to us, I apologize, pero I need to we need to keep it 100. You need to hablarlo 100%. Excuse my non-fluency here. Yeah, there's a slight difference. I will say that based off my 31 years to life on this planet. It just depends. It's not the same for everybody. It just depends on who you're dealing with. But definitely,
It's okay. At least you try.
Definitely in the Puerto Rican case, I think what happened. I think my personal opinion, because I've been to the island plenty of times to visit family, this and that. I think what tends to happen is a lot of Boricuas nowadays, even on the mainland. This is me visiting over there as the Americanized one, mainland person. A lot of people down there got too complacent. They got too used to the American lifestyle that brings with them, but it's that sense of playing both sides. Nosotros no somos Americanos, but yet they want that American lifestyle. But they tell themselves we're not really like the Americans. I'm like, maybe in language and culture, yes, they're completely different. But is there really that much of a difference going to, like, say, because you see McDonald's everywhere.
I have seen that duality that is not afforded to other Latinos, and I think that leads to some things that we'll talk about a little bit later on.
Okay.
I'll lay a little bit for the buffer.
Okay, and whereas in the you're talking YG.
So on the subject of cultural perceptions, what do you think when people hear the word Latino, or what do you think they hear about Latinos versus from us compared to Latinos from Central and South America? What do you think that perception is? So basically in the American side, and then the Latin America side. Ricky first.
All right. So for me, from my personal experiences, when people hear Latino, I don't know, is it because I'm in front of them, but it's relatively positive. They bring up the food, the beaches, the music is very big. They always bring up reggaeton artists and stuff like that. So I feel like they see music, our food, and our basically tourist sites when they hear Latinos, mainly Caribbean because of the beaches and stuff like that. But I feel like the main difference between Caribbeans and South Americans will be the I want to say longer lasting native Taino, Indian, stuff like that. I don't know why. I don't know if they were there longer, or there was less inclusione of all the races and stuff like that. But that Native American, Native Taino culture, I feel is more prevalent in South and Central America compared
I
to.
think this is a subject that Ivan would love to talk about, and if we have a little time, we'll get into that the indigenous and other roots later on.
Okay.
But yeah, if I know Ivan, and if Ivan goes into it, he will not stop. He is very passionate about it, and he has some very interesting perspectives. Which I told him it's very interesting how me as a full-blooded Puerto Rican don't know, and who was born and lived there, don't know a lot of the things that he knows because he just has that interest, that desire to learn more and reconnect. So Ivan, what do you think when Americans hear the word Latino, and then when Central and South Americans hear the word Caribbean Latino
Okay.
or Puerto Rican even?
I will say I'll try to elaborate on my best abilities here. For me personally, and I prefer to use the term Latino over the term Hispanic, and that's part of the dilemma of it. But with that, but I'll try to speak non-biased about it. I think terms like Latino, it means something different for different people. I live in Texas, and a lot of people tend to go more for the term Hispanic. A lot of people, you have a lot of Mexican Americans in this state that, like, a lot of people don't like to identify with like Mexic. Like for example, the people who are born in this side of the border. Oh, I'm not Mexican. I'm Hispanic. Hispanic becomes like the government word that everybody thinks of, and I think it just depends on who you're dealing with. For me, Latino explains more of people's origins from Latin American nations that were once ruled by Spain, and some definitions they include Brazil with the Portuguese, because Portuguese, Spain, Iberian Peninsula. That makes sense. But it's just even though both terms are used more like in the mainland, um, I've had people tell me like that Latino
So
refers to more.
it
I'm
is an
sorry.
interesting take based
Go
on
on.
like the terminology. It's a very literal perspective, but interesting. Um, but from what I recall, the terminology is in reference to so Hispanic is España, España, so Spain, so derived from Spain. So all the Spanish speaking countries that Spain had, um, not necessarily the Spanish colony. So like Philippines is not a Hispanic country. So it's basically Latin America and Hispanics are or Hispanic America are basically, Hispanic is not a word. So Latino and Hispanic are, if you take it as a Venn diagram, they're like very overlapping. Like so most of the
Interchangeable.
countries are here in the middle, but then you have Spain and then you have Portugal, Brazil as outliers. Portugal is not included. So Portugal is understood as Latino, but then not Hispanic. But
Right.
then Spain is Hispanic but not Latino. So that's typically the understanding that people
It's weird.
operate with. I don't know all the other intricacies and outliers like Guyana and all those countries. Nor do we have the time to go through those. Se
If
muere el
only.
teléfono. Um,
If only.
but really, so again, so let's take it a bit further. So as far as the section is about perceptions. So many people think, unfortunately, illegal immigration when talking about Latinos. Unfortunately, they think that all Latinos come here illegally. They can't fathom the idea that people go through the process of application, like Arabs and Asians and Africans go through. Which is really reductive in my opinion, but I don't want to get too much into that. But what do you say to that? Like, what do you want people to understand as far as that perception of illegal immigration being all Latinos?
Okay, could I? Okay, because I'm gonna because I recall you asked me the other question. I'm gonna kind of merge it with what you just asked me. What is people's perception? As far as when I was growing up and living here in the state of Texas, generally speaking, the general terminology is anybody who's Mexican is automatically going to be anybody who's Latino who's automatically going to assume to be Mexican. And the secondary groups in the comparison would be like people like Central Americans or Salvadorians. You also have a large Colombian population, ironically, here in Houston, going back to like the 60s and stuff, 60s, 70s time period. But generally, the terminology, the rule of thumb is always Mexican. What do people? And yes, a lot. And yes, every time from when I was coming up, everybody always assumes everybody's an illegal immigrant or just somebody who's an immigrant. All they assume somebody who's Mexican or crossing the Rio Grande or something. They don't understand that a lot of people from other countries come here, and the trend always was a lot of people will come here legally first and then overstay their travel visas and stuff. Everybody just assumes everybody's just cramming the border south of the border, or at least that was the old stereotypes. So probably somewhat still prevalent, and nobody ever assumes anything else other than that's like Texas in the Southwest, I guess, from my general. No, for sure, Texas has a distinct
Yeah,
mentality.
visa overstays are such a different dynamic compared to crossing the border illegally, and it's really ignorant to make those assumptions.
And it ain't just Latinos overstaying their visas. You know.
So, Ricky, what's your perspective on these issues? Like, what's your reaction when you just hear people assume that we're all illegal immigrants?
Well, I have two perceptions and 2 points of views. Going back to what Yvonne said, I feel like if I were to be of Mexican descent, I would be more defensive when people brought up legal entering the country illegally due to the geography of Mexico being closer to United States and stuff like that. But bro, nobody is entering United States on a boat from Dominican Republic like to United States. Is like a farther trip. I don't know if people do it, but you could see how that would be more difficult. So I feel like me being from the Dominican Republic, personally, I just laugh it off or just see the ignorance in assuming that all Latinos are.
I do know
illegal.
that Cubans do go to Florida in boats.
Yep.
But people don't know how to even distinguish asylees from immigrants or undocumented migrants.
Refugees.
But continue. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. But yeah, so that's my point of view from other Latino countries. Personally, for me, I got on a plane from Las Americas Airport in Santo Domingo. I went to JFK and from JFK to Rochester. So there, I came here by plane, brother. So my father did as well, my grandfather. So me knowing that I didn't come here illegally is just ignorance, you know, just ignorance.
I'm tempted even to, when people assume that we are illegals, is just to laugh at it. It's because if you're coming at me, offending me and disrespecting me, I might not insult you, but I will laugh at you because it's really laughable. It shows again on so many levels, lack of understanding. Even speaking with Puerto Ricans and how they assume that all people that aren't Puerto Rican are illegal. Like I'm like, what the heck? If you think people don't apply,
I'm
and
I'm glad you brought
like,
that up.
so in America, political asylum is very different from the three of us who are economic migrants. We come here for a better economic opportunity, versus Cuba and Venezuela, and other countries who are being persecuted directly by their governments for political disagreement or for religious persecution. That's why we bring in people from Africa, from Europe, from the Middle East, from Asia, because there's like direct persecution from the governments. That's a refugee. That's a political asylum, and people don't really understand that dynamic. And so conflating all three types of people is really reductive, and it's really important to educate the public. Wherever you stand on the merits of who deserves what, that's up for discussion for sure. Um, but the way things are up to now, it's really important for understanding and when talking about these issues, knowing where each group falls in to speak more accurately. Because when someone talks to me like about the border and about that people are going to put me in cages or people are going to deport me, I'm like, I'm Puerto Rican and I have an American passport. That's not how it works. And so it's almost disrespectful because people are demonstrating you don't care about me as a Puerto Rican. You care about me as a political talking point. You care about me to gain points in a conversation. And that's reductive and disrespectful. What do you guys think about that? Like, do you guys get the kids in cages argument? And we don't want to really go into that subject, but how do you feel when they tell you about it? Like, assume that you're going to go into a cage or you're going to be deported.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Then I'll let Ricardo speak on his piece. Me personally, and I'm just, it's kind of a mixed bag for me because I'm coming from two different backgrounds. But from the Puerto Rican side of things, yeah, I see it. Like traditionally, the Boricua on the Boricua things, we're not seen as traditional immigrants. We're not. We have that. We have somewhat of that privilege where we don't have to necessarily worry about, La Migras or INS knocking on the door, getting ready to round people up just so they can get you out of here. And a lot of Puerto Ricans fall into that trap, unfortunately, that just because they're U.S. citizens,
Puerto Ricans
that
are very privileged, and we need to acknowledge that privilege.
there's almost this snobbish hierarchicalism going on. Que, esa otra gente. I know. Like it's meant to be looked down upon. It's like I don't understand. We were granted U.S. citizenship in 1917, the Jones Act. The Jones Act. 1 month before World War One. I think a lot of people miss that point. We were only granted 1 month before World War One.
Strange. I haven't.
I wonder why. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I haven't seen that snobbish attitude up in the north. Not much.
It's probably different in a lot of places. It's probably different. I've dealt with people from New York. The historical communities known as the New Yorkers. I have to put it in context because On the island and on the mainland, it means something different. Some people take it as an
So,
insult.
Ricky, your perspective, or if you haven't started talking, this
Go ahead.
delay,
Go ahead.
Dios mío.
Rico, go ahead. I mean, Ricardo, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Is that right, brother?
What's the Dominican perspective on this? I'm curious.
The most, not so much cages. I've never been told that, oh, we're gonna put you in cages and stuff like this. But well, I want to say because the way you illegally leave Dominican Republic to say Puerto Rico, as you said, Puerto Ricans can enter and leave United States freely because they're citizens. So the way you leave the country illegally will be yolas or small boats. So whenever something does come up, they just assume that all Dominicans come to United States or Puerto Rico in boats, which again, no, I came here on a flight. But the cages and the situation going on at the border, out of respect for those affected, because I haven't looked that deeply into the situation. So out of respect for those.
That racism from Puerto Ricans, talking about yolas and bringing up yolas, I apologize for that. I have heard that, but continue. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, no, it's okay because again, you just laugh at the ignorance. But I've never been told that I'm gonna be put in a cage, so I don't really have a perception on that. Besides, I can see how hard it is on the families affected by that.
Can I elaborate on something to add on to what you were saying, Ricardo?
Sure.
Okay. Because and then the other thing, is that
it's honestly like. Go ahead, Ivan. Sorry.
I guess we're just gonna vibe off each other for this. I mean, but my thing is that I feel like I'm going to speak from the Colombian's perspective here, even though I'm not coming from the immigrant experience. I think what it comes down to a lot of times is just, I think it's lack of understanding. Like a lot of people who are not coming from those experiences, and then even in Miami, the Cuban Americans, even though they historically came here as refugees, they too fall into that mentality. They look down on other immigrants, but they don't let you dare talk to them about their refugee experience. It's like, oh no, you have no business speaking on our stuff. They feel like they already got here. Their people have been here generations. We looked out for our own.
Cubans
now
have that attitude,
huh? Perception wise, I mean,
it's from an elitism or like they're apprehensive.
Certain families, the older families, because a lot of those people who left Cuba, and not to make this political, but we're talking historical, not the political stuff, historical. A lot of those families came from middle and upper class people in Cuba, the ones that Fidel le votó, when he set up socialism and all that stuff. And no por tanto with the political stuff. I'm not taking a side, but we have to talk about that.
Fidel Castro is a historical figure.
We have to talk about it because he for better or worse, he redefined a lot of historical talking. Like he's responsible for a lot of those Cubans, and there were Cubans coming to Florida beforehand, but they're part of the dynamic when it comes to the perception of the community with the immigration, because they up until 5 years ago when Obama or whatever, in 5-6 years ago when Obama ended wet foot dry foot policy, when he for the most part tried to open ties with Cuba again, people could still technically travel there, but now once again they put restrictions on it. And the Cuban Americans, at least the older ones, they had a better time adjusting to society, because many of those families came from elite families con dinero, y hay veces los cubanitos, the Cubans, They come from those historical European Spanish backgrounds. And you got to remember when they came in the late 50s and 60s. It was a different time in America where the race gap was, was also defined for its time period. They paved the way for a lot. Like, for example, bilingual education, it was because of the Cuban Americans.
It's really interesting to bring that dynamic, because people think that Latinos were always integrated and we didn't have these same dynamics as the United States has. But we're going to talk a little bit more about the integration of Caribbean Latinos amongst ourselves, because colorism is very non-existent nowadays. Especially
okay, go ahead.
Now.
To an extent.
But we're going to get ahead of ourselves if we go there.
I'm trying to respect.
How do we change this stereotype? My opinion, the best way to end this stereotype of we're illegal immigrants, all of us, is fully embracing, fully integrating into the society, keeping our roots, because our roots are cool. Keeping the language, por favor, sigan hablando el idioma, practíquenlo, aunque les salga mal, just try it. I really do compliment Ivan for putting his biggest effort, despite not having grown up in that context and having that privilege of having a day-to-day tutoring experience. Like, I learned like by force. I was shamed into speaking Spanish properly. But and the subject of integration, of assimilation, how do you think it's best for us to approach that? Because we live here, like, we do not want to segregate ourselves. Segregation was ended by Black people, and we thank Black people for doing that for us, because we didn't do that. Black people did it for us. And so how do we honor that and fully engage? Because when I came to the United States, I saw self-segregation, economic segregation. And then the more I live here, I'm like, if you go to the suburbs, you'll see all races there, not in the same proportion, but I know it's a socioeconomic thing as well as a voluntary thing. When I go to family gatherings and I say the word American, people are apprehensive of using the word American. But when I have my Arab friends, if you go to episode 1 where Joe Kamari was talking, he's very proud of being an American, and he's very Lebanese. But there's that perspective. It's like, just because I call myself American as a nationality, it doesn't change my ethnicity. And I think that for me, I think that that there's that fear that I'm going to lose my language, I'm going to lose my culture, I'm going to lose my ethnicity if I call myself American. Not true. The Italian Americans don't live that, and we'll talk about that in a future episode. How would you approach that integration, if you believe in that?
Okay.
Why you go first?
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. The integration thing, it's good for, look, this is just my opinion, because I've heard a lot of radical opinions. I've heard a lot of mainstream opinions. Me personally, integration is good for everybody. I don't like, and I grew up and I had grandparents who probably remember a time when stuff was a little bit more segregated. So I kind of got to hear some of those stories. My thing is that the thing about Latinos feeling that they're going to lose their culture if they, I not necessarily, because the thing that people miss a whole lot with the term American is we're all the Americas, not just the United States of America. Notice the of in America, U.S. of America. We're all North, South, and Central America. I think it's more of that old way of thinking where a lot of people don't talk about this anymore, and not modern day, but manifest destiny, like the whole sea to shining sea thing.
Right. We should probably say U.S. citizens,
U.S. citizens, yeah.
using the term U.S. citizens and people being apprehensive of that. But continue.
I think it's because a lot of it is also lack of education, and I'm not talking about like as in people are ignorant, because people are ignorant on a lot of things. I think it's more about, I think in my personal opinion, as Latinos, we shouldn't have to apologize. I mean, we're American U.S. We were one of the earliest of a lot of these immigrants that came to this country, and some of us are in the case for like Mexican Americans. Some people could still trace back their families to, like, I live in Texas, for example. Some people could trace their families back since, the Texas War of Independence, and then 10 years later, Mexican American War, where some people had families on both sides of the border that they can still trace their lineages from. Some of us, like a lot of people, like to view us as similar to Asian Americans, where they always assume we're always foreigners wherever we go. And it's even more complicated with Puerto Rico, because people kind of smear us like, oh, you Puerto Ricans, but you guys are supposed to speak English. You're U.S. territory. Why should we feel sorry for you when you should have learned? You guys are a U.S. possession. Why are you not speaking English and getting caught up with it? Like that forced.
Puerto Rico is such a complication, and people don't know how to address it.
And I feel like as Latinos, and then the other problem is there's this perception out here that a lot of Latinos just hate dealing with Puerto Ricans. Like I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get overboard.
Let me let Ricky talk about his experience before I address the English thing, because it's a really important thing that you brought up.
Go ahead, Ricky. I want to hear you. I want to hear you out.
All right. So personally, before coming here to the United States, I was already taking English courses. We actually have a Dominican American school. That's the literal name, Dominican American, in the city that I'm from, San Pedro. So right out the gate, before even coming here, my parents understood that we are bringing a child up in a American country. Like, he's gonna be brought up in the United States. So, like, common sense tells you that this child is gonna have to communicate as he enters the educational system. He later moves on to the job force. He's gonna need English to communicate with others and to learn. So I feel like also there's a gap between the older generations and the newer ones.
Communication is unity.
Yes. So I believe there's a gap because the internet and just the 90s, mostly with sports, we see the Dream Team, the fact they had an international sports. I feel like in the younger generation, it's not looked down upon to hear different languages as it is with other generations. But I feel like if you're in a country that is la mayoría Americano, Caucasian, businesses, the law system, which I don't know if you want to touch on that briefly. You need to know the laws. You need to know your rights. So it's a survival tool to know the language in the country that you live in. So, in my personal experience, my father, he attended English school, and he does as best as he can with the language, but he understands it. My mom as well, but they made it a top priority for me to be fluent in the language.
Ricky has brought up the basically what I wanted to talk about. I'll allow a 3-second buffer. So I think that it's really important to really allow ourselves the right to be able to know our rights, to be able to communicate with others, because not being able to communicate automatically isolates you. Imagine going to Japan. I speak Japanese. I can function in society, but both of you, like, I'm not trying to be rude, like, can you survive in Japanese society? And so Ricky brought up a very good point that it's both of us prepared for such a transition. I think that yes, there are haphazard instances where you have to automatically just like escape to the United States, like for Hurricane Maria, for example. But if you know that you're a U.S. territory, in my opinion, and it's in the cards, the ability to go to the United States, and you get free English education, why not take advantage of it? And unfortunately, for Puerto Rican people, we see the Dominicans, good job, surpass us. We see the Colombians surpass us, good job. We see the Arabs, the Africans, the Asians, the Eastern Europeans, they all come from very dirt poor situations. Not always, because everybody has a very nice aspect to their origins. But if they know that they're going to come here and they prepare, like they have that goal in mind, like they're going to come here, and so it's like, let me use my resources. So I'm just not happy with that situation where we have all the tools given to us for free, and then we come here expecting U.S. Americans to cater to us. I don't see Chinese subtitles everywhere. I don't see French subtitles everywhere. I don't see Arabic subtitles everywhere.
I'd like to add one thing.
We have Spanish subtitles almost everywhere.
Okay.
So I think that other immigrants might probably look at us like, well, we made the effort. What about you guys? So
I want to.
I interrupted Ricky
Let him
really
talk,
quickly.
let him
Anything else you want to add to that?
Yes. So the pace. This is a faster pace than back home. Well, personally, in the Dominican Republic, most people are grinding to have a better life, you know, at work and stuff like that. That that transition between not being able to speak a language affects the way we can connect with other English speakers. Because if you both speak the language, you may have more opportunities to find things you have in common and stuff like that, which will lead to better relations with all the races that are in the melting pot of what is called United States. So I feel like as a whole, we're social beings, and if you can communicate with your neighbor and say, "Oh, did you watch the game?" "Yeah, I watched it." It's just natural law will tell you you will have a better time connecting with that other race, even if you have different cultures, because you can communicate at the end of the day.
Excuse me. Okay. Interesting.
Thank God I speak English, because it allows me to communicate with people all around the world. Like you're gonna see on this channel, you're gonna see people from Syria, you're gonna see people from Egypt, probably you're gonna see people from Portugal, Brazil, all around the world. They all speak English. They're able to share their life and their experience with us because they did that. But we can't share our experiences unless we speak English, and we can share with people, because you got to think, it's not just white people we're talking to. Yes, it's white people, but yes, it's Black people too. Black people don't always speak Spanish. A lot of them do express an interest, and it's appreciated. But also the Asians, the Arabs, Africans, other Caribbean islands, everybody. Yes, Spanish is a widely spoken language. Around the world, but English is very widely spoken in this country. And if we want cohesiveness, we want unity, we want active participation, and to be equal, equal means equal playing field and equal rules. You can't know the rules if you don't know the language. and it opens up the doors for being taken advantage of, because humans like to take advantage of each other no matter what they look like on the outside. Siblings like to take advantage of each other. I'm sorry for everybody. Well, I don't think I take advantage of my siblings, but anyway, it happens even in family. So for someone that doesn't know you to take advantage of you and use a language gap as it's not racism, it's human nature. There can be a racist undertone, but it's a human thing. But I see Yvonne is itching to say something. So before we move on to the next subject, go ahead.
About the language thing, and I want to elaborate. Yes, YG, I do agree. I do agree that as Latinos, we need to be more acculturated and fluent when it comes to the English language. I think more so us than anybody else, because we are the largest ethnic minority groups in the country, collectively speaking. I think we are the future of this country when it comes to the transition of how the country's going to go. And a lot of outside groups fear us, and not like in a sinister way, but they fear us because they probably see our potential before we do. And to elaborate on the language thing, but at the same time, I do want to emphasize that a lot of groups do look at us probably with that.
And I think they fear us because they don't understand us. How can they understand us if they can't understand what we say?
And then the other thing, and then the other thing I noticed, because I've hung out with quite a few people from other cultures, and it's like they're like, I don't want to curse on this platform. It's like it's like they have it on showing interest, and they don't want to know about. I feel like some groups have not shown enough interest to learn about our cultures, but we have to know about theirs. And I don't have any issues with that, whether it be the Chinese Americans, or Vietnamese, or other like the Middle Eastern and South Asian groups. They're comfortable. They're used to being in their own insular. In my personal view, they're used to being in their own insular groups. But then
I think we should all have the opportunity to share who we are.
Yeah.
And being able to speak about it, being able to communicate is key.
And then the language thing, and the language
aspect. For 3-second buffer.
I'm sorry. And the language. Okay. And the language thing, I feel is yeah. Okay, I didn't want to cut up.
10 seconds. I'll Yvonne, continue.
Okay, the language thing, I do feel that we need to be more transparent with everybody, but I do feel that we earned our right to speak our language as a secondary language in this country, because we helped build this, and half of this nation was once historically, which a lot of people don't like to talk about anymore, historically, once belonged to another nation, whether it be Mexico, and Spanish colonization on top of the Puerto Rico experiment with the territorial status. I just feel like we have to do it in a way we have to play both. We have to play, live in both worlds while still maintaining who we are as Latin people, whether it be as individuals or as a collective community. Go ahead.
I think that we're best served by acknowledging the notion that we have two hands.
Yeah.
We can hold in this hand who we are as Latinos. Never let it go, because you're doing a service to yourself and to your descendants by letting it go. We have unique experiences that we need to share. And for example, on the issue of colorism, if we let go of who we are, we can't teach that to America, and America needs to learn. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way, but I mean this as a supportive way. America would be benefited by learning how we defeated colorism in Latin America, and we need to really take a closer look at that, because a lot of people still think that it's such a huge thing. And it exists, but it's not strong. And we can weaken racism in America. But then learning to grab with the other hand the U.S. American identity, because that brings us together with everybody. And if we're going to be equal, we need to be equal to every group. And we need to be able to communicate with every group and understand every group. I mean, I hear so many Puerto Ricans talk about other cultures, and like there's this such lack of understanding and like so foreign, and it's like, wait a second, but they live here and you live here. How foreign really are they? Like their origin is foreign, but there's this extra layer of foreignness, for lack of a better term, because there's minimal engagement. Like el chinito ese me dijo, yo no lo entendí, pues yo no hablo inglés, pero like meet in the middle. It's like English language is the in my view, it's the meeting table. Everybody's origin and their languages, those are the chairs, but we meet at the table and everybody benefits from what's on the table. But if we're gonna go into little smaller tables and just like, you know what, I don't understand, I'm not a part of that. It's like, you're gonna miss out on everything that the people at the larger table are enjoying. When I see what Cubans have done for themselves in California, what I see what the Vietnamese have done for themselves in California, when I went there, I'm like, what Dominicans have done in New York City, I'm like, contra, like we could do better. And not as a competition thing, but we can be at the same level, because privilege and home field advantage you would think like it's possible to be at least on an equal level, but it's taken for granted, in my opinion. Let's unite. Let's be together, and hopefully this platform, which is about different languages and cultures, can spark that flame of unity. So let's talk about pop culture. The latest thing, La Negrita del Bronx. Mira.
Wow.
Este negrito que está aquí no quiere escuchar a una persona decir que eso es ofensivo. This negrito right here doesn't want to hear people in the United States talking about that word, which is such a beautiful term of endearment. In my origin, in my context, in our context, you've taken a beautiful thing, America, and you have, with an imperialistic attitude, crapped on our culture and our language. Negrito is such a beautiful thing, a beautiful term of endearment, and has been just made so negative. I really feel bad for J-Lo feeling forced to define a term of endearment and defend a term of endearment. Before I give my 2 cents, Ricardo, you have clearly the most African genes out of all 3 of us, even though my grandpa is darker than me. We're not going to talk about the lottery of colors, but Ricky.
Yeah. It's crazy because all 3 of us on different standards qualify for the term negrito within our community, within our culture. It's so much. All right, so your skin color in Dominican culture, in Puerto Rican culture, Colombian, I will assume as well. Negro, negrito. I personally haven't sensed the looking down on or negative context that people are assuming, I guess. And it's mostly the African American community that took offense to what she said, or labeled it as cultural appropriation. When in the 90s, Celia Cruz, her song "A Negra Tiene Tumbao," there's this other song it's very popular. It says like "Mami que sea algo tiene negro" and stuff like that. I could see
Cultural
how,
appropriation. But then
yeah.
we're black when it's convenient. Oop, I'm gonna stop. Stop.
That could be
I should
another
have put that in
episode,
the
right?
background. I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play it.
I don't mean to take your shine, YG.
Oh, I can't play it. I don't have anything to play it on.
What her song?
So yeah, I can't fathom it being an issue to
Continue, Ricky. I'm sorry. Or okay. Sorry, Ivan. Go ahead.
No.
Dios mío, qué delay.
Let Ricardo finish his point. I'll give you your.
Es que está hablando. Continúe. Sorry.
All right. So for me, I can't fathom it being a controversy because J-Lo, on any standard in the Latin American community or culture, she qualifies for the term negrita just on her complexion. So again, I'm not, and again, not everybody got offended by this. As we all know, the cancel culture is not everybody in that community that was offended, but those that did were the loudest. So now we have this on our hands where negrita is a controversy of all things. But it personally for me, it's a part of our culture. It's a part of our how we speak. You know, the nicknames of gordo when you're skinny, negrito when you're pale white. So I can see how some people might label it as cultural appropriation, but that's just how we are at the end of the day.
Okay, I'm probably gonna have the most to say about this because
Yeah, those ironic uses of the word negrito and gordo are very common.
that's true.
What other uses does negrito have in Dominican Republic before Ivan and I go on that?
Go ahead.
All right. So personally, in my case, is sort of a flirting word. Like, I don't know. It's just negrito lindo and stuff like that. I don't know. It's a term of endearment. We hear in bachata songs that the main character is called negrita, negra, and stuff like that. But in Dominican Republic, it's just again calling somebody gordo, calling somebody chino, calling somebody negrita, negrito. It's just yeah.
Okay. I'm going to. Oh wait, 3-second buffer. I'm sorry. 3-second buffer. Go ahead. I want to give everybody the. Okay. Whenever. Okay. So y'all guys want to hear me? What do I think about people getting outraged by this? This is gonna be the cookie cutter version because families and stuff are watching the stream. So I'm gonna go ahead and say this. This is why U.S. society needs to do a better job on introducing these cultural nuances to the rest of the population. It doesn't matter if you're the most educated or the most Joe Blow type of person. Excuse me if I wasn't plain talk about it. The problem I see is that people are making the negrita thing about color, as though J-Lo is trying to steal somebody's ethnic identity.
I think it's our job to educate the society about it because they don't know, unfortunately.
My grandmother, you would refer to me, and I'm sure with other of my cousins and siblings, ay mi negro, like and look, I mean, I'm not the most darkest person in the world, but tampoco, we'll just leave it at that. I just feel that the problem is that everybody's basing this off the American one drop rule, and they're trying to a lot of people already had issues with J-Lo, and I'm not saying I'm defending J-Lo. J-Lo has been known for her controversies in the past. This isn't the first time J-Lo has got caught up with something like this. I don't know. I mean, I was in middle school when this happened, but she also got into some other
One
stuff.
Drop was so racist, and that is so pervasive in everything, and it needs to stop. It's a KKK term. And principle, and people have it in their psyche. But continue.
The whole thing with me and whatever African Americans are listening to this, we got, yes, in Spanish, mi negro, mi negrita, or mi negrito can be used depending on which context it is. Yes, some people may use it in a racist tone depending on who's doing it, but that doesn't mean that defines the whole situation. There is, for example, in places, mi negros could mean mi hermanos. Oye, mi negros, where y'all at? Mi negra, like as in, where you at? It's almost like
that is so outdated. Like back when slavery was a thing in our context, it was used racist. But continue. Sorry.
And my thing is to the black people listening to this, like, is that really that different from when y'all would call, like, when certain people like the whole brother sister thing? It's almost in that same nuance of relationship. Or sometimes when people use the N-word, even though it's not meant to be used as an endearment, they took it upon themselves to reclaim their own negative usage of a historical term and turned it into something else to where they uplift themselves. The whole mi negrita
it's in that family of expressions.
It's in there within their consciousness. And mi negrita, mi negros is our consciousness. It has nothing to do with racism. And they're trying to police people who probably look like myself. Like, you don't get to say that because Afro-Latinos don't get enough representation in y'all. They try to police us on how things are done in Latin America because of the prejudice. But it's like, when has anybody ever, or say you guys are only claim black when it's convenient, but when has it ever been convenient to be black even in America? I'm talking about historically speaking. Like, why is that used as a deterrent to bring somebody down instead of most of us come from historical African. And a lot of Latinos don't like to talk about this. No. I'm not talking about how we identify.
Well, the speak of the convenience being black is a different subject, but I want to talk about like my perspective, the country perspective of negrita or negrito.
Okay, I could answer that question for you. But
so I'm like from the hills of Puerto Rico, like what you would call a hillbilly, but we use the word jibaro, and that's a different subject. We're not going to talk about it right now, or I don't know if we're going to have time for that. But negro is used by even the whitest of Puerto Ricans. So when we use negrito, there are different uses. So negro can be like, okay, so oye negro, ¿cómo tú estás, mi amor? Like that's the flirtatious use. Like, or there would be like in so this is not Puerto Rico, but I just remembered La Tortura, I think it was from Shakira. Oye mi negra. Like Shakira is blonde and she's Lebanese, which is not considered black. It's considered white on the census. And she's I think she's a real blonde, but whatever. She's very white skinned, and she was able to use that word negra because she is of Latin origin. Latinos will have African origin in our bloodstream, and we're not going to quantify it. We're just going to give it as a given. Like we're gonna just assume
it's
that there's going to be some percentage, and this is where the defeat of colorism comes in. We're going to assume that some percentage of us is black, as well as white, as well as Latino. We don't pick. We shouldn't pick. Whoever makes us try to pick and choose is racist, in my opinion.
And colorism, yes.
That's kind of like a separatist mentality. I don't like it. But negro is used for friendship. It's used for lovers. I have an aunt and uncle who would call that to each other, and one was black and one was white, but they use it equally, and it was so like I grew up hearing that. Like it's natural for us. I want, whenever I'm married or in a relationship or whatever, to have that word used with me because it's a beautiful thing. It's equal on the level of papi or mommy. Like it's like we know that papi and mommy means mom and dad, but in our culture, in our context, it's also those terms of endearment. And it does have like all these terms of endearment have multiple uses. And again, Black Americans, thank you. We understand that you support us, but please listen to us when we're saying that it's not the same thing. And our experience as African descendants is much different than yours. We acknowledge the struggle that you've gone through, but please have an open mind and an open ear and understand that the term Afro-Latino isn't even used in our context. We're all Latino, just like in the episode 1 for Lebanon. If you are from Moroccan, Saudi, Palestinian, or Armenian descent, they all use the word Lebanese to identify themselves. And so that's how we are in Latin America. So please, white and Black Americans and even Latinos who are born here and didn't know, because I'm pretty sure I saw Latinos getting offended at this, and I am so mad when a Latino joins into that.
I want to
because that
speak on
shows
that.
your ignorance. That shows your parents' lack. I'm sorry, I'm getting heated, but
I want to speak.
we're passionate about culture and language in this platform.
And Ricky has the mic.
Getting angry about the word negrito, it just shows that your parents did not expose you to that. You didn't expose yourself to that. And so please educate yourself on these things. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ricky. You could go before me. Go ahead.
No, it's all right.
Okay, let me speak on this. Okay, the Latinos, and I've been getting into fights with people on Facebook. Well, not really fights, but exchanges. And even with some African American Facebook constituents out here trying to press me on this. I'm like, we'll focus on the Latino aspect. The Latinos getting upset about this. Why are you getting upset for J-Lo using me negrita? Yo soy tu negrita. You know why she's using that. There's some color struck people in the Latin community that needed to get over themselves, because you know what mi negros means. It doesn't. It's putting up a front here, and we're on a platform with Latinos in here. I can say this because I
find it a problem if they sincerely don't know, because I think that they don't know.
I'll speak on that as well. The ones that are like past 3 or 4 generations trying to get cheeky with J-Lo, because J-Lo, you're not that dark skinned. Tu no eres una negra. What are you doing? Stop exploiting African American. I'm like, the ones that do that, I question their intentions. I'm like, are you guys kidding me? You guys claim to be these are the same people. Yeah, the whole the cancel culture stuff. All of a sudden it's a cool thing to say, to cancel Latin identity, as though, oh, well, since you guys don't respect the Black people, therefore we're not really Latinos, because Latinos are
Puerto
colonized.
Rican flag and not speak Spanish or not understand the culture.
Like when did that ever become a thing? Because I mean, when did that ever become a thing? Now it's almost kudos if you do that. I'm thinking, where is this coming from? And yes, to the parents that don't teach your kids about the origins, look, yes, we're all Americans at the end of the day. We're all gonna make it in this great country called the United States of America, but we should not have to apologize for who we are as people. We're past this. This ain't the 60s. This ain't even the 20s no more. We should not have to renounce our identity just to accommodate the people who never really gave us much of a chance in the first place. And it doesn't have to be about a white.
I refuse to apologize for the word negrito. Like, it is a cute term. I love it. It's so cute.
I agree. And I believe another episode should be I request it.
Continue.
I requested that we need another platform to discuss this further. But what I will say this is that this is why it's important for us as a community to address this amongst our own, to say, look, we need to educate our people on the origins of all of our people, bloodlines and everything, because this is otherwise
African roots of Latinos. It will be a good
we need
episode.
to, whether it be mestizo, indigenous, but especially the African roots, because everybody wants to run away from it for historical reasons like prejudice, slavery, segregation, and racism. And we need to, and what I noticed are African Americans, they try to almost punish us because, oh, but you guys claim white on the census, so therefore you're white now. Like, this is not Jim Crow anymore. We're not
Honestly,
being.
I don't know if Ricky has seen this, and we'll transfer it to him, but I've seen a lot of like desire to only claim the black side. Ricky, have you seen that?
Only claim the black side of what?
Like, they'll claim the black side more than the Latino side because, oh, Latino just means white anyways. Pa que dice eso? Like that attitude, that so-called woke mentality, as they call it. And I've been on these woke pages, so
like I'll see Puerto Ricans say, "Oh, I'm not white. I'm black. I'm African." It's like, you're white skinned. You have African descent. You don't have to pick one.
They keep on trying to racialize terms like Hispanic and Latino.
Go ahead.
But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, so like renouncing their Hispanic or Latino.
Latinidad, Hispanidad, you know?
Yeah. Again, this has to be like a younger generation thing because, you know, my upbringing was, I have military members, well, military people from back home, which is very Dominican. You feel pride from where you come from. You're Dominican, Latino, Hispanic, whatever, but Dominican first, pretty much. And I would never renounce to either my Dominican heritage, African, Taino, Spaniard. So personally, I don't see what's the purpose of specifying Afro-Latino. It's like saying bread, you know, is just say bread, just say Latino, because
I will speak on that. I will speak on that. Let me add on to what I'm sorry.
I've had family members, unfortunately, like the whitest family members say, "Yo soy negra." It's like, so have you seen that?
Look, my take on this is that, and I don't mean to cut off anybody. If I did, I apologize, but this is just that passionate for me. I feel like the thing that really comes down to is, look, this is why the colorism crap is stupid. Excuse my language. This is why the colorism stuff is stupid. Back to the term with most of us are going to come, especially if you're a Caribbean Latino, and this also includes the coastal continental countries along the Caribbean coast through Central America and South America, places like Venezuela, Colombia, and those areas like Panama, all the way up into Honduras. A lot of those people, whether they acknowledge it or not, they're going to come from historical, maybe more or less, depending on where you're at. But they're going to come from historical black.
I have seen black Venezuelans, yeah,
ancestors. Let's just entertain U.S. standards. Even if they're not, quote unquote, 50% or less African descent, they still come from historical African bloodlines where they may not call themselves negros in the racial sense, but they were passed on knowledge of those experiences, whether it be directly or indirectly through many generations. especially being the most strongest in the Caribbean in areas like Santo Domingo, Cuba, and Borinquen, aka Puerto Rico. I am not what
Should be
people would
eating.
think
I
Afro
should be eating.
Latino, but I do come from mulatto ancestors. I am a partially black and other mixtures. I'm not scared to acknowledge this on this platform. So people cannot come at me and say you have no right to say me negro because you. First of all, we're not coming from an American perspective. We're coming from a Latino perspective.
I think that using the term Afro Latino is just making us choose. And I want
I
to learn about all of me, not just one part of me.
I feel like the reason
So
why.
let's move on to
Can I finish this point
Spider-Man.
before we move
3
on?
second buffer.
Okay, I think the Afro Latino thing is because some people in the Hispanic community.
So
Go ahead.
we spoke a little bit briefly before the show about the Hispanic Spider-Man. And it's not okay. I because of the buffer. Go ahead, continue. Sorry.
Oh, you wanted to? Okay, you're giving me a. Okay, I'm just gonna make it brief, and then we can move on to Miles
These
Morales.
delays are something. Dios mío.
Okay, I think that
Yeah.
this is my opinion on the.
Stay quiet for a few
Okay.
seconds.
My opinion on the Afro Latino thing is, I think the reason why some people want to emphasize Afro Latino is because there is concerns in the greater Hispanic community that historically the people who would be identified as Afro Latino or more African predominant origins, they feel like they've been ignored for generations in Latin America, lack of representation, lack of this and that, or acknowledgement. And I feel like that's their attempt, although probably Americanized, but that's their attempt to finally draw light to the situation. The only thing I don't agree with is using that as a means to separate from your greater identity. You could say you're Afro Latino, but just, if you're claiming to represent, because Afro Latinos are still Latinos. I mean, it's just, if you're going to talk about your identity, do it in a way where you're educating and not trying to segregate yourselves from people who look like myself. Esa blanquito, that white Latino, like as though it's Jim Crow. This is not Jim Crow anymore, and our culture never had to go through that legal segregation. And I want Black people listening to this as in Americans to understand that. Look into our history. We're not scared to hide anything. Go ahead, look in our history. Look at the sins of Latin America, because we are a big bulk of the population. Look us up, and then if you find something you don't like, go ahead. Just like we have to learn American history, whether it be the founding fathers of the country, and then when we talk about the history of slavery, and I mean this with all due respect, because I want us to come together. Of course, we're going to have our different struggles. We're going to have our different ways of coming. Yeah, every community is going to have a difference, but it's about solutions, not this isn't oh, we're going to separate forever. And like, no, those days are over. And anybody who's telling y'all guys that, they're playing you. And I didn't mean to make it a rant, but I just feel like we need to come together and at least help with solutions. If there's some misunderstanding, come to people qualified to speak on this. And I'm just speaking as a regular person, a humble person. That's all I'm saying. And I don't know what happened to YG here, but but Ricky, go ahead and talk.
Do you feel the use of Afro Latino and Latinx come at the same time? Like, do you see the way that's being brought up as okay or not?
Now, I have mixed. I'm sorry. I have mixed feelings about the term Afro. I'm not Afro. Latinx. I get white. I also get white. It's a younger term. A lot of people who are in college or second or third generation types are using this term. So, I mean, I'm 32, but I went to community. I was dealing with all kinds of people over the years, young and old. The term Latinx, I feel they're trying to cater more toward like the the LBGT community because people who don't conform to gender norms, even though it doesn't add up, because if you're gonna shy away from, like for example, donde está mi Latinos? Somebody who may feel that way, like, wait a minute, but I'm neither a woman, like transgenders. I'm neither a woman nor a man. I'm a transgender. Why do I have to conform to it? Latinx is not in the Spanish, language officially in its definition, like the Royal Spanish Academy. If you guys want to make it a thing, maybe take it up with them, but it's officially not in the US language. I think there's other terms that come from a gender neutral perspective. I just feel like if we're going to have these type of conversations, you're entitled to bring your argument. Just make it a good one. That's all I'm saying. I feel like I don't agree with the term because I don't see it's not making sense according to the Spanish language. It's not discriminating anybody. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I feel like the Afro Latino term is more of the U.S. Basically people outside of the main Latin American countries. So I personally feel like either younger or people that live outside of the mainland are using these terms, because I don't recall ever back home ever hearing the Afro Latino term used in the Dominican Republic. I'm guessing you didn't hear from your Puerto Rican or Colombian side of the family.
Not necessarily. Not really. That's more of a newer phenomenon.
Yeah, so.
But I get it. So.
Because then, if you're.
Uh-oh. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Okay. This this is not good. Sorry guys for the technical difficulties. My phone died, so I'm plugging it in. So we're gonna try to finish the interview this way. Um, I'll wait for my guest to show up. I need a crew. That's what I need. I need a crew. That. Okay, so Ricky's back, and then Yvonne. Come on. Ay, Dios mío. Que no se repita lo mismo de ahorita. Come on. Iván, avanza. Pues en lo que él aparece, let me not hear from there. Let me hear from here. Just the a little differently, I think. Iván, te voy a cortar. I will cut him. I DM'd him the link. So hopefully he gets back on. So can you guys can I'm not talking to two people at the same time. Ricky, can you recap like what has been covered up to now?
Yeah, he talked about the Afro Latino and how it's mainly looked at the color of your skin and not so much. And then we also covered the Latinx term, um, and I brought up the question that did they come up at the same time? Like, is this part of the PC movement or stuff like that? Because I can't recall ever hearing Afro Latino or Latinx back home. So I said that it's mainly people that live outside of the mainland. It's more of an American term and stuff like that. So that's what we mostly talked about while when you got out the string.
It's such definitely language imperialism to take the values of one country and impose them on someone's language. And these are the people who speak this way usually speak against European colonialism and imperialism, but are linguistically colonizing our language by policing it with their culture. Like it's not the same thing. But let me see what Ivan said because um, yes, mío.
Just give me a second because I gotta manually copy the link.
Okay, so so you guys just talked about that about the Afro Latino term.
Yeah,
I think taking it even further, the word Latinx is I don't know if you talked about the word Latinx and how that is also, in my view, cultural imperialism. Did you guys talk about Latinx?
yeah. Latinx is we talked about how it's mostly to include the LGBTQ. I don't know where it stops. I didn't mean that as a joke. I literally don't know
No, it's
the
trust me.
official term.
I've spoken to members of the community who don't know where it ends either, and there's huge debate on that. People are also in debate on what the so.
But yeah,
Dios mío, Iván,
we view it as a term, as a way to include them as well. Well, the people who use the term.
like I'm on of the opinion that other cultures don't get to make up what the language. You know what? I just thought about Japanese. So Japanese, if you say thank you, you could say arigato, of course, but you could say thank you because um, when Americans went to Japan, they introduced they introduced a lot of words to Japan.
Yeah.
But Japan has voluntarily accepted Romanized words or foreign words because there are many terminology that was introduced to them after they already formed their language that they just find it more convenient to use um, to borrow those words from other cultures.
Yeah.
But our language is dictated, for lack of a better term. It's guided by la Real Academia de la Lengua Española, and whatever they say about the language goes, because we have such a stratified s- uh, um, Hispanic world. We need a unifying force, and they have been that. And so back in Puerto Rico, when we're taught the language, the grammar goes strictly based on what the academy recognizes. How about Dominican Republic?
It's non-existent.
Really, you guys don't use la Real Academia?
Oh, I thought you meant. Yeah. I thought you meant the
I was to say,
Latinx. No, no. I meant the Latinx and specifying Afro Latina in daily life is. But yes, we use the Academy.
yeah. I mean, I would be hard pressed to think of a Spanish-speaking country that doesn't acknowledge them. Like that would be the rebel thing to do. Like if anyone would do that, probably would be Puerto Ricans to say like "screw you," and we kind of do because I noticed that the way we speak um, is very unique. It's like we skip our S, we turn R's into L's.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? I think that we can leave the pop culture segment and other things for a separate episode. There was um, desire expressed to do a second episode. This has been crazy. So let's leave it at that today. Thank you to all our viewers. This has been Konnichiwa Habibi with YG Garcia, and
Ricardo Jose.
we really show business is something that I was not made for. I was made for the classroom. But that is all for today.
All
Hasta
right.
luego.
Bye.
Hasta luego.